Right, everyone, I have finally got myself a copy of the Old World Dwarven Mountain Holds Battalion. Now, unlike the Tomb Kings and Bretonnia, I have every intention of keeping these because my first ever complete army was actually a Dwarven army, completely in metal. And it was quite a substantial army as well. I believe the White Dwarf issue was, I think it might have been White Dwarf 101, and there was Bretonnia versus Dwarves within the issue, and you could buy the army in the back. So I actually bought that army. Now that army is long gone, unfortunately. But just to give you an idea, the army was priced at £100 back, well, 30 years ago now, that would have been. And in that, you got quite a sizable force. Now, I'm 100% certain that for £100, which is roughly what this is, you don't get as many troops. But by the same logic, when I think about it, I'd love to do a comparison of what you used to get for £100 30 years ago and what you get now. Now, again, they were all metal and these are all plastic, so there are differences, but you also get, two sizable miniatures. So it is worth thinking about, to say the least. Anyway, actually, before I open it, let's just check out the back of the box. So it tells you here that basically you've got the option of 32 Quarrelers or 32 Thunderers or a 50-50 split of each. Same with the Dwarves themselves, the actual clansmen. You can flick between 32 shield and hand weapon or 32 great weapon, or a split of the two. Again, it's probably best for balance to do a perfect 50-50 split. And of course you can do a gyrocopter or a gyro bomber, mix of each one. Okay, so let's have a quick look in here. The first thing we get are the gyros. So I like the way that the kit, the kit is very, very complex. There's a lot of parts to it. And you can see the gyro bomber obviously has extra length to it compared to the gyrocopter. Overall though, I'm just having a good look here. There's definitely, some nice designs. For those of you who've ever seen me put together the Caradron Overlords, what's it called now? The airship. Even though they're two different factions from two different systems, they're still Warhammer and they're still Dwarves, and the gyrocopter definitely, gives that feeling. You can even see, he's very clearly wearing what you might call a prototype Caradron airsuit. Okay, and I like that, because I'm a personal believer, and I think the lore does support it, that just before the Old World ended, refugees of the Old World did manage to escape to the realms. So there's definitely a feeling, to my mind, that, not all the races of the Old World were destroyed. Some of them did manage to get out of there. So, you've got your gyrocopters. I like these. I remember the original gyrocopter in metal. It's very different to this kit, no doubt about it. It doesn't have the fully covered fuselage, but the basic layout and function of it still suggests that you could use it. In fact, I would probably say the older gyrocopter model would make a great scout gyrocopter. Okay, what else have we got here? So let's have a look at the sprues. So most of these sprues are the same. There's not a lot to show you with, with these. But as you can see, it feels off the top of my head that you might be able to mix and match the bodies and the heads around. Of course, I'll have to have a really good look at that. But I'm just checking here. yeah, I mean, there might be a certain amount of flexibility about how you put these on. I'm not going to know that until I have a really good look. But it could potentially be that you've got a bit of a mix and match thing. This one here, some of them look like they very clearly are the two-hand weapon. Some of them look very clearly to be the single-hand weapon. So I'm going to have a good look at that. You've got a lot of nice shields. They've got very clearly sculpted shields. I personally don't always like having shields fully sculpted because it makes them harder to paint and it takes away your personal freedom to create your own personal heraldry. I think shields are great on miniatures for your own personal heraldry. So having stuff like this kind of locks it down a bit. We appear to have a musician with a very ornate horn, and we have choice of standard to give a bit of variety. We have little add-ons. Now these look like potentially horn pipes. We've got little runes that people carry, little potentially shoulder guards or some such thing, and little bits and bobs to personalise the unit. As you can see, you've got choices of axes, you've got choices of hammers, double-handed weapons. So it does kind of carry on with the idea in Warhammer that the old world, that you've got a bit of customization, which is what you want really. I personally am going to do a 50-50 split. Now, running through this, if you look carefully, so you can make up to 2 units, but if you see, you get more than enough banners to create quite a wide range. I mean, look, you've got so many banners here. I like that because if I ever decide to make a Dwarven township, then I think those spare banner poles and things are going to come in very handy. In fact, you get so many, it's ridiculous. You know, you get one per sprue. Right, okay, so they're the core troops. They're all the same, but then, you know, they're going to be ranked up, and when you've got everything ranked up, you kind of lose track, per se, of which one looks, you know, you don't really need a vast amount of variety when you've just got ranked units. Okay, now on to our crossbowmen and our thunderers. Now, I myself find benefit in both the handguns and the crossbows. So, based upon my old knowledge of playing Warhammer, you take the crossbows for range and you take the handguns for armor piercing, and it's a good idea to have a steady mix of both. I used to have a Dwarven army that was, you know, pretty damn big enough that I could, if I wanted to, field an entirely ranged army. In fact, it was very aggressively ranged, to a point where, you know, although they weren't great in hand-to-hand combat, well, they weren't that bad. They just lacked usually things like shield defences and things like that. But the point being that there was enough of them that the enemy would rarely even get into charge distance before a couple of units were breaking cohesion. So yeah, I actually like the idea of having a entirely ranged Dwarven army. They can be devastating, to say the least. Well, here's the interesting thing about this. So, along with the crossbows that you've got here, you've also got quite a good selection of handguns over here. I also like the fact that there seems to be quite a good collection of pistols for your commanders so that you can really mix and match. You've even got like a double-barreled pistol here. There's probably rules for that. Let's see what else we have on here. So we've got our little kind of runes. We've got our ammo pouches by the look of it. What else have we got? These quivers to go on the back of the crossbow units. Do you know, again, looking here, if I look at this, this looks like the same setup from these to the clansmen, so the regular Dwarven troopers. I am oddly curious if these bodies are interchangeable between the two units, just to give a bit of variety actually in your units. I'd actually be quite curious to see if you can mix and match between the hand weapon troops and these. Another good thing we've got on here is clearly axes. Now, I'm liking this because I think Dwarven Rangers are a kind of combination of ranged and axe infantry. So I'd have to check the rules. I don't have the rule book yet, unfortunately. But I kind of like the idea of potentially seeing if the rules support you turning these into rangers by giving them crossbows and then, you know, kind of putting the axe on the back. I think one thing that I would have liked to see on this is having the crossbows, so maybe even having a couple of crossbows that aren't attached to a unit. I believe that would have given a bit of interesting variety, because you could have had some of them physically, you know, pulling out their axes and putting their crossbows away, but they all seem to be actively in a cocking or firing pose. Other than that, though, there's quite a lot of, good little add-ons. These look like kind of tiny little shields. I'd have to check exactly what they are, but that's what they appear to be off the top of my head. What else have we got on here? Of course, we've got our standards. And I'm going to assume that we've got our musicians too. Now there's assuming that they look like drums, I'm going to assume that this thing here, yeah, that's a drum. So they very clearly have someone drumming as their musician. What else do we have here, just out of curiosity? No, I think that's it really. We've got a few like little extra bits. There's lots of, as I said, I'm going to assume that this here is a light shield. I can't remember, is it called a buckler when it's a light shield like that? One that really just covers a tiny part of the arm. Okay, so you know we've got some nice things going on here. As you can see, though, they're all kind of identical. So unfortunately, with these, there's a lot of carbon copies. There's not a great variety in them. Of course, we've got our how to build book, which I will be using in order to build a wide variety of these. But again, I think it's quite nice to have some proper old world dwarfs again, to my mind. What else have we got here? Let me just pull one of these out. Then transfer sheet, because you know what, not everyone likes to hand paint. Sometimes it's nice just to have some, you know, well-made transfers to put on your miniatures, particularly things like banners. It does appear that they come on these 50mm. I think these are a 50mm base for the gyrocopter. I actually have some magnetised versions of these bases. However, the good thing about the gyrocopter one is it comes with these dimples in it already, and I think I've probably got a magnet that will fit in there. So I should be able to push a magnet in there and magnetise the bases. So there we go. That is our old world Dwarven army. I'm so pleased to have a Dwarven army again. I stopped playing really about 10 years ago when I moved house and I ran out of space. And I sold my old Dwarven army. But by the same logic, I always sort of regretted it being my first ever army. And I kind of have wanted to start one again. But of course, by the time I started collecting again, the old world had been discontinued, which was, you know, very upsetting for me to say the least. Okay, well, there we have it. That is our Dwarven Mountain Holds Battalion. Now, I'm going to try and remember what used to be in a £100 army back 30 years ago. And this is what I recall being able to buy. So I might be wrong, and please tell me if I'm wrong about this. But the armies that you used to be able to buy straight from White Dwarfs, from the battle reports, I remember them hitting around about £100. I recall them having usually at least 2 units of sort of what you might call line troops. I also recall getting at least 1 unit of crossbowmen. I can't remember if there were 2 though. I also remember it coming with a lord, so you would have like a general. It definitely had a cannon in it, and it definitely had a unit of slayers, because I'm 100% certain that that army had a unit of slayers. It might have even had a giant slayer in it. So 100 quid's worth of metal miniatures 30 years ago would have easily had, to my mind, you would have removed the gyrocopters, potentially had a cannon instead, but you would have also got a lord, maybe 2, depending on the type of army it was. And I'm pretty certain you would have got a 3rd unit of troops in there. So that's going off the top of my head. That's not absolutely correct, but it's a rough idea. With the cost of metal miniatures now compared to plastic miniatures, the value, you know, obviously the inflation and economics come into play here. 100 quid then is not worth 100 quid now. 100 quid now is worth considerably less money. So I think for 100 quid in a lot of ways, it's not bad value for money. As someone who used to be able to pull, you know, 100 quid's worth of miniatures and get a full, I think they were about 1,000 points potentially. So I don't know if this is a 1,000-point army. I'll really have to check. But there we go. That's my musings on it. I'm really pleased. I don't think it's bad value for money. In fact, it's actually good value for money if you can buy the box, the whole box, rather than gosh, my brain never stays awake at this time in the morning. You know, obviously compared to buying individual units, it's great that there's 2 gyrocopters in it, but because there's 2 gyrocopters in it, I don't consider this box rebuyable either. So if you were to look at the Orc army, the Orc Battalion, I haven't got one of those, but because that's got chariots in it, it's rebuyable, because it's always good to double up those things. It's not that gyrocopters and gyrobombers aren't brilliant, it's just you have to get them to the enemy, and that makes them highly vulnerable. Now, one of the things about a dwarf army, to my mind, is you don't head towards the enemy, you get the enemy to head to you, and you pound them along the way. So I do personally feel that although it's great to have a couple of gyrocopters in this box, and that improves the value, I would have preferred one less gyrocopter and a cannon. And I would have considered it worth buying 3 of these. I don't know if it's worth me buying 3 of them because then I'll end up with 6 gyrocopters. And I don't feel that the rules really support having 6 gyrocopters. I mean, don't get me wrong, then you've got to consider points cost, how much of a battle, the size of the battle you're playing and things like that. So I'm glad. I think this is great as a one-off purchase. As someone who likes variety in my armies, it doesn't have it. You've literally got more. If you buy this again, you've got more clansmen, more, but you don't have any elites. You don't have any specialized troops. You end up with extra gyrocopters, but again, that's not the way I ever played with dwarfs. I was always a pound them from a distance and make them come to you player, and it always worked for me as the dwarfs. So having 2 units that you have to choose to push forward, that's not a tactic that I would personally employ. So anyway, so I think there's some really great things about it. As I said, I love that there's gyrocopters, because maybe I wouldn't go out my way to buy them if I had a choice between buying gyrocopters and buying cannons. I would end up buying cannons every single time. So this kind of forced me to get units that maybe I wouldn't normally even, I probably wouldn't actually spend my money on directly as a single purchase. Right, I hope you've enjoyed that video and got some ideas. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.